Hey there, and welcome to Crazy Pepper, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing till the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Crazy Pepper. Hit that bell and let the drama begin. My wife was screwing her boss, and I had the receipts. Literally. I'm Connor Hennessy, 38 years old, and I fix industrial equipment for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy. More importantly, it taught me how to spot when something's broken before it completely falls apart. Too bad I didn't apply that skill to my marriage sooner. The house we lived in was a fixer-upper on the east side of Cleveland, the kind of place where you could still buy something decent if you didn't mind putting in the work. I'd spent 5 years turning it from a dump into something respectable. New roof, updated electrical, refinished hardwood floors. Tara used to joke that I loved that house more than her. Turns out she wasn't joking. Tara Hennessy, soon to be Tara something else, was 35 and worked as an AR director for Consolidated Industries downtown. She had this way of walking into a room like she owned it, all confidence and perfectly styled blonde hair. When we first met at a company picnic 7 years ago, I thought I'd won the lottery. A woman like that, interested in a grease monkey like me? I should have known it was too good to be true. The first sign something was wrong came about 6 months ago. Tara started working late. A lot. Big project, she'd say. Breezing in at 9 or 10 at night, smelling like expensive cologne. That definitely wasn't mine. She'd shower immediately, claiming she felt grimy from the office. Since when did HR work make you grimy? Then came the phone calls. She'd step outside to take them, lowering her voice to a whisper. When I asked about it, she'd roll her eyes. Work stuff, Con, you wouldn't understand. Maybe not, but I understood enough to know that work calls at 11 p.m. on a Saturday weren't normal. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago at our neighbor's barbecue. I was grabbing a beer from the cooler when I overheard Tara's friend Liz talking to another woman by the fence. She says Rick's got more stamina than her husband, Liz giggled, whine making her louder than usual. I mean, what's in his vitamins? Shh, the other woman hissed. Connor's right there. But I'd already heard enough. Rick Farrow was Tara's boss. Mid-40s, divorced, drove a silver Mercedes that he parked like he owned 2 spaces. I'd met him at a few company events. The kind of guy who wore expensive suits and talked about his self-made success while conveniently forgetting to mention his father's construction company that gave him his start. I went home that night and started paying attention, really paying attention. Tara kept her laptop in the kitchen, usually closed, but not password protected. She was careless that way, confident that her boring engineer husband wouldn't know how to find anything interesting. She was wrong. It took me 2 days to find the hidden folder labeled Personal Projects. Inside were photos I wish I'd never seen, text message screenshots that made my stomach turn, and a document titled Exit Strategy that laid out her plans to divorce me and move in with Rick. The document was thorough, I'll give her that. She'd calculated our assets, researched divorce lawyers, even planned how to break the news to her family. There was a timeline. She'd file papers in 2 months, right after Rick's own divorce was finalized. They'd already looked at condos downtown. At the bottom of the document was a note that made my blood boil. Con's too trusting and lazy to fight this. Should be straightforward. Too trusting and lazy. Right. I spent the next week going through everything more carefully. Bank statements showed dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges on days when she claimed to be working late. Even a jewelry purchase that never made it home to me. She'd been sloppy, overconfident, and it was all documented. But the real goldmine was her phone. She'd connected it to our shared cloud storage months ago to back up photos, and apparently forgot about it. Every text message, every photo, every dirty detail of her affair was sitting right there in our joint account. The messages between Tara and Rick were nauseating. Not just the sexual stuff, though there was plenty of that, but the way they talked about me. Con's working late again, thank God, more time for us. He's so clueless, it's almost sad. Can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. But it was the group chat that really got to me. Tara had created a private message group with Rick and her closest friends, Liz, Marcy, and Tom, who was Rick's drinking buddy. They called it the Inner Circle, and they'd been sharing every humiliating detail of my marriage for months. Con tried to plan a romantic dinner last night, Tara had written. Burned the chicken and forgot to chill the wine. Rick would never be so amateur. Poor Connor, Liz had replied. He has no idea what's coming. The best part, Rick had added, is that he'll probably help her move out. Guy's too nice for his own good. They were right about one thing. I was too nice. But they were about to learn that nice and stupid aren't the same thing. I screenshotted everything, every message, every photo, every document. I organized it all into folders, cross-referenced dates with credit card statements and calendar entries, and built a timeline that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. If Tara thought I was just a dumb grease monkey, she was about to get educated. The hardest part was acting normal. Going to work every day, coming home to her fake smiles and lies about her day, pretending I didn't know she was texting Rick while sitting right next to me on the couch. But I needed time to plan, and I needed her to keep feeling secure. My friend Dave from work noticed something was off. We were having lunch in the plant cafeteria when he finally called me out. You look like hell, Con. What's eating you? Dave was one of the good ones. We'd worked together for 8 years, and he'd been to my wedding. His own marriage had survived 2 kids and a mortgage, so he knew the territory. Just some stuff at home, I said, pushing my sandwich around the plate. Tara giving you grief? I almost laughed. If only it were that simple. Something like that. Dave leaned forward, lowering his voice. Look, I don't want to stick my nose where it doesn't belong, but Marcy mentioned seeing Tara at that fancy steakhouse downtown last week, with some guy in a suit. Marcy was Dave's wife, and she worked as a server at Romano's. Exactly the kind of place Rick would take his mistress to impress her. What day was that? Tuesday night. Marcy said they looked pretty cozy. Tuesday night. The same night Tara told me she was working late on quarterly reviews. I'd eaten leftover pizza and watched baseball alone, while my wife was being wined and dined by her boyfriend. Thanks for telling me, I said. Dave nodded, understanding passing between us. You need anything, you call me, okay? That conversation made up my mind. I was done being the clueless husband. It was time to take control. I spent that evening organizing my evidence and making plans. Tara was upstairs taking one of her long showers, probably washing off Rick's cologne again, while I sat in my workshop behind the house, plotting her downfall. My workshop was my sanctuary, a converted garage where I kept my tools and worked on side projects. Tara never came out here, claiming it smelled like motor oil and sawdust. Tonight it smelled like justice. I pulled up the group chat on my laptop and read through the latest messages. They were planning something for next Friday, a dinner party at our house. Tara had suggested it, saying it would be fun to have everyone over. Rick would bring his soon-to-be ex-wife Sarah as cover, while Tara played the perfect hostess. They thought it was hilarious having their affair right under everyone's noses. Let's see how they like a surprise, I muttered, closing the laptop. I had 6 days to prepare, and I intended to make them count. Friday night arrived, with the kind of autumn chill that made people want to stay inside with good food and company. Too bad I was about to ruin everyone's appetite. Tara had spent the entire day preparing for her dinner party, cooking and cleaning like Martha Stewart was coming to judge her. She'd made her famous lasagna, bought expensive wine, and even put out the good china we'd gotten as wedding gifts. The irony wasn't lost on me. You seem nervous, I told her, as she fussed with the table settings for the 3rd time. I just want everything to be perfect, she said, not meeting my eyes. It's important to make a good impression. Oh, she was going to make an impression, all right. The guests started arriving at 7. First came Liz and her husband Mark, followed by Marcy and Tom. Rick showed up fashionably late with Sarah, his soon-to-be ex-wife, who looked uncomfortable and kept checking her phone. I played the perfect host, taking coats and offering drinks, making small talk about work and the weather. But the whole time I was watching how Tara's eyes lit up when Rick walked in, watching how they carefully avoided standing too close together, watching how the inner circle exchanged knowing glances when they thought no one was looking. Connor, this lasagna is incredible, Sarah said during dinner. She was trying to be polite, but I could see the strain in her marriage written all over her face. Poor woman had no idea her husband was planning to leave her for my wife. Tara's the cook in this family, I replied. I just try to stay out of her way. Smart man, Rick said with a laugh that grated on my nerves. Happy wife, happy life, right? Something like that, I said, raising my wine glass in a mock toast. The conversation flowed around the table. work gossip, vacation plans, the usual suburban dinner party topics. But underneath it all, I could feel the tension. Tara kept shooting glances at Rick. Liz was drinking too much wine and getting giggly. Tom was making increasingly inappropriate jokes that had everyone laughing a little too hard. After the main course, while Tara was in the kitchen getting dessert, Liz leaned toward me with wine-flushed cheeks. "So, Connor, how do you feel about Tara working so late all the time?" The table went quiet. Mark elbowed his wife, but she was too drunk to take the hint. "I mean, all those late nights at the office," Liz continued, "must get lonely." "Not really," I said calmly. "I keep busy. You'd be surprised what you can accomplish when you have time to focus." Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Tara's a dedicated employee. The company really values her contributions." "I'm sure they do," I replied. "She's very good at her job, very thorough, very organized." Tara returned with dessert, tiramisu from the expensive bakery downtown. As she served everyone, I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. She could sense something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on what. "This looks amazing," Sarah said, accepting her plate. "You really went all out tonight." "Well, it's a special occasion," Tara said, sitting back down next to me. "Special how?" I asked innocently. Tara's eyes widened slightly. "I just meant having everyone together. It's nice." "It is nice," I agreed. "In fact, it's perfect. Because there's something I want to share with all of you." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder, placing it on the table next to the wine glasses. Everyone stared at it like I'd just produced a live grenade. "Connor," Tara said carefully, "what are you doing?" "Just sharing some entertainment," I said, pressing play. Tara's voice filled the dining room, tinny but clear through the recorder's speaker. "Con tried to plan a romantic dinner last night. Burned the chicken and forgot to chill the wine. Rick would never be so amateur." The color drained from Tara's face. Rick looked like he was going to be sick. Around the table, everyone else sat frozen, forks halfway to their mouths. But I wasn't done. I let the recording play, broadcasting months of their private conversations for everyone to hear. The sexual details, the cruel jokes about me, the plans for their future together. Sarah dropped her fork with a clatter that seemed deafening in the sudden silence. "Turn it off," Tara whispered. "But we're just getting to the good part," I said, letting Rick's voice fill the room. "The best part is that he'll probably help her move out. Guy's too nice for his own good." That's when Sarah stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You fool," she said to Rick, her voice shaking with rage. "You absolute fool." "Sarah, I can explain," Rick started. "Explain what? How you've been screwing my friend's wife? How you've been planning to leave me?" She turned to Tara, fury blazing in her eyes. "And you, in my face, pretending to be my friend while you were sleeping with my husband. It's not what you think," Tara began. "It's exactly what I think." Sarah grabbed her purse from the side table. "Don't contact me, Rick. My lawyer will be in touch." She stormed out, slamming the front door hard enough to rattle the windows. The remaining guests sat in stunned silence, the recorder still playing their dirty laundry for all to hear. "Connor, please," Tara said, reaching for the recorder. "Turn it off." I clicked it off and slipped it back into my pocket. "Sorry, folks. Didn't mean to ruin dessert." Rick found his voice first. "You son of a witch. You recorded private conversations?" "Actually, I didn't record anything," I said calmly. "These are all from text messages and voicemails. Amazing what people leave lying around in shared cloud storage." Liz was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Connor, we didn't mean what? To mock me behind my back? To help my wife cheat? To treat me like I'm too stupid to figure it out?" I stood up, looking around the table. "Well, surprise. I figured it out." Tom tried to salvage the situation. "Look, man, maybe we should all just calm down and what? Pretend this never happened? Go back to playing happy families while my wife screws her boss?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't think so." Rick stood up, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You think you're so smart, Connor? You think this little stunt changes anything?" "I think it changes everything," I said. "See, while you two were busy planning your future together, I was planning too. Did you know that infidelity affects asset division in Ohio divorce proceedings? Did you know that conspiracy to defraud a spouse of marital assets is a civil tort?" The blood drained from Rick's face. Tara grabbed my arm. Connor, please, we can work this out. I gently removed her hand from my arm. We are working it out. My lawyer will be in touch Monday morning. Both of you. Your lawyer? Rick scoffed. What lawyer? You can't afford... Funny thing about being married to someone in HR, I interrupted. You learn a lot about employment law. Like how sleeping with your subordinate creates a hostile work environment. Like how using company resources to conduct an affair is grounds for termination. Like how your company's morality clause in executive contracts might be relevant here. Rick's face went white. He'd forgotten about the morality clause, and most executives did until it bit them in the A. I walked to the front closet and pulled out Rick's coat, holding it out to him. I think it's time for you to leave. This isn't over, Rick said, snatching his coat. You're right, I agreed. It's just getting started. After Rick left, the remaining guests made their excuses and fled like the house was on fire. Soon it was just Tara and me, standing in our dining room surrounded by the ruins of her carefully planned evening. How long have you known? She asked quietly. Long enough. Connor, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to happen this way. Which part? The cheating or getting caught? She flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Rick and I, we fell in love. Love, I repeated. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like two selfish people who decided their happiness was more important than everyone else's. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You wanted out of our marriage. But you were too cowardly to just ask for a divorce, so you decided to have your cake and eat it too, all while making me look like a fool. Tears were streaming down her face now. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. Every lie, every late night, every time you came home smelling like him, it all hurt. The difference is, now it's your turn. I walked toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Tara, you might want to start looking for a new job. Something tells me Consolidated Industries is about to have an opening in their HR department. I left her standing there in the wreckage of her dinner party and went upstairs to pack a bag. I'd be staying at Dave's for a few days while my lawyer got the paperwork ready. By the time I came back, Tara would understand exactly how much trouble she was in. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I could hear her crying downstairs. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 7 years, wanted to comfort her. But that part was getting smaller by the minute, replaced by something harder and more determined. She'd called me too nice for my own good. Time to prove her wrong. Monday morning came with the kind of gray October sky that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent the weekend at Dave's house, planning my next moves while his kids played video games and his wife Marcy made sympathetic noises about my situation. You sure you want to go through with all this? Dave asked over coffee. Divorce is messy enough without turning it into a war. She started the war, I replied. I'm just finishing it. My lawyer's office was downtown in one of those old buildings that tried to look prestigious, but mostly just looked tired. Janet Carter had come recommended by a guy at work who'd gone through his own ugly divorce. She was in her 50s, sharp as a razor, and had a reputation for taking no prisoners. Mr. Hennessy, she said, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled, this is quite thorough. You've documented everything. Everything I could find. Bank records, text messages, photos, timeline of the affair. It's all there. She nodded approvingly. And you obtained all of this legally? Shared accounts, shared devices, shared cloud storage, all completely legal. Good, because what we have here is a textbook case of marital misconduct with financial implications. Your wife and her paramour have been using marital assets to fund their affair, and there's clear evidence of conspiracy to defraud you of your share of the marital estate. I liked the way she called Rick a paramour. It sounded appropriately sleazy. What are my options? Several. We can file for divorce on grounds of infidelity, which affects asset division in your favor. We can also pursue civil action against both of them for intentional infliction of emotional distress and conspiracy. And given Mr. Farrow's position as your wife's supervisor, there may be employment law violations we can exploit. Exploit how? Janet smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Mr. Farrow's company has very specific policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. They also have a morality clause in executive contracts that could void his severance package. A well-timed complaint to HR and the board of directors could be quite effective. Do it. There's one more thing, she said, pulling out another folder. I did some research on Mr. Farrow's divorce proceedings. His wife filed last week citing infidelity and requesting emergency spousal support. She's also requesting a forensic accounting of his assets. This was getting better by the minute. How does that help me? If we coordinate with her attorney, we can create a pincer movement. He'll be fighting battles on multiple fronts, which limits his ability to focus resources on any single case. Plus, if we can prove he used company assets to fund the affair, that becomes a criminal matter. I left Janet's office feeling better than I had in months. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt like I was back in control. My next stop was Consolidated Industries. I'd never been to Tara's workplace, but I'd heard enough about it from her complaints over the years. The building was one of those glass and steel monuments to corporate success, all clean lines and expensive landscaping. The receptionist was a young woman with a professional smile and tired eyes. "Can I help you? I'd like to speak with someone in human resources about filing a complaint." "What kind of complaint?" "Sexual maltreatment and hostile work environment." Her smile faltered slightly. "Let me get someone for you." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Patricia Williams, the senior HR director and Tara's boss. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who had the air of someone who'd seen every kind of workplace drama imaginable. "Mr. Hennessy, I understand you want to file a complaint against your wife and Mr. Farrow." "That's correct. I have evidence that they've been conducting an inappropriate relationship that violates company policy and that this relationship has created a hostile work environment for other employees." I handed her a folder containing selected portions of my evidence. Nothing too personal, but enough to establish the pattern of behavior. Patricia reviewed the documents with the expression of someone who just stepped in dog crap. "This is quite serious. You understand that filing this complaint will likely result in an investigation that could lead to termination for both parties?" "I understand completely. And you're prepared to testify if necessary?" "Absolutely." She made some notes on a legal pad. "We'll need to conduct a formal investigation. I'll need you to provide a detailed statement and any additional evidence you might have." "I can have my attorney send over everything by tomorrow." "Your attorney?" "Janet Carter." "I assume you know her?" Patricia's expression suggested she did indeed know Janet Carter and wasn't particularly happy about it. "We'll be in touch, Mr. Hennessy." I left the building feeling like I just lit the first fuse on a very large firework. By the time I got back to Dave's house, my phone was buzzing with angry messages from Tara. "Connor, what did you do? Rick just called me in a panic. Someone filed a complaint with HR. Connor, please call me. We need to talk. This is insane. You're destroying people's lives over a mistake." I deleted the messages without responding. She'd have plenty of time to talk once the lawyers got involved. That evening, I was in Dave's garage, helping him work on his motorcycle, when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Connor Hennessy. This is Rick Farrow. We need to talk." "No, we don't." "Listen, you son of a witch." I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. "Hang up on me again and you'll regret it," Rick snarled when I answered. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. You think you can destroy my life and just walk away? I think you destroyed your own life when you decided to screw my wife. I just documented it. Meet me tonight. Parking lot behind Romano's restaurant, 10 o'clock. So you can do what? Beat me up? That'll look great in court. Just be there, Connor. Unless you're too much of a coward." He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, considering my options. Meeting Rick alone in a parking lot was probably stupid, but I'd been playing it safe my whole life, and look where it had gotten me. "Who was that?" Dave asked, looking up from the motorcycle engine. "Rick Farrow. He wants to meet." That sounds like a terrible idea. Probably. But I'm tired of being the reasonable one. Dave wiped his hands on a rag and gave me a long look. "You sure about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Romano's was the same restaurant where Rick had taken Tara on their romantic dates. The parking lot behind the building was dimly lit and mostly empty at 10 p.m. on a Monday night. Rick's silver Mercedes was already there, parked under a broken streetlight. I pulled up in my pickup truck and got out slowly, keeping my hands visible. Rick emerged from his car, looking like he'd been drinking. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was loose, and his hair was messed up. "You came," he said. "You asked me to. I asked you because I wanted to look you in the eye when I told you what a pathetic loser you are." "Okay, consider me told." That seemed to deflate him slightly. He'd probably been expecting me to get angry, to give him an excuse to escalate things. "You don't get it, do you?" he said. "Tara doesn't love you. She hasn't loved you for years. She was going to leave you anyway. Maybe, but she was going to steal half my assets and make me look like a fool in the process. Now she gets nothing, and everyone knows what she really is. She's a good woman who made a mistake. I laughed. A mistake? Rick, she's been planning this for months. She had spreadsheets. She calculated my net worth down to the penny so she'd know exactly how much she could take in the divorce. Rick stepped closer, and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you've done. My wife filed for divorce. The company suspended me pending investigation. My kids won't even talk to me. Sounds like consequences. Consequences? His voice rose. You destroyed my family. No! You destroyed your family when you decided to cheat on your wife. With my wife. I just made sure everyone found out about it. Rick swung at me then. A clumsy haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped back and let his momentum carry him past me, then stuck out my foot. He went down hard, landing face first on the asphalt. Stay down, Rick, I advised. You're drunk and this isn't going to end well for you. He rolled over, blood streaming from his nose. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Tomorrow my lawyer files the divorce papers. Next week, the company finishes their investigation and fires both of you. Your wife's attorney will take half of everything you own, and Tara will be lucky to find work as a receptionist after word gets around about why she was terminated. I walked back to my truck, then stopped and turned around. Oh, and Rick, next time you want to threaten someone, make sure they don't have a recording app running on their phone. I held up my phone, showing him the red recording indicator. His face went white. Sweet dreams, I said, and drove away. By the time I got back to Dave's house, I'd already emailed the recording to Janet Carter. Threatening a plaintiff in a civil suit was a serious mistake, and Rick had just made it worse by attacking me on camera. My phone was full of messages from Tara, increasingly desperate as the reality of her situation sank in. But I didn't read them. I was done listening to her lies and excuses. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Satisfaction. The ledger was starting to balance, and I was just getting started. Tuesday morning brought news that made my coffee taste even better than usual. Janet Carter called while I was getting ready for work. Rick Farrow was arrested last night, she said without preamble. Arrested for what? Drunk driving. Apparently he left your little parking lot meeting and decided to drive through a sobriety checkpoint. Blood booze was twice the legal limit. I couldn't help but smile. That's unfortunate. It gets better. His company called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. Word is, they're terminating him for cause, which voids his severance package and stock options. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate, about $2 million. I nearly choked on my coffee. $2 million? Executive compensation packages are generous these days. Of course, his wife's attorney is already moving to freeze his assets pending the divorce settlement. This was turning out better than I'd hoped. What about Tara? She's been placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. They'll probably terminate her by the end of the week. After hanging up with Janet, I called in sick to work. I had more important things to do than fix industrial equipment today. My first stop was the bank, where I closed our joint accounts and opened new ones in my name only. Perfectly legal, since I'd filed for divorce, and it would prevent Tara from draining our savings to fund her legal defense. Next, I drove to our house to collect more of my belongings. Tara's car was in the driveway, which I'd expected. What I hadn't expected was to find her in my workshop, going through my filing cabinets. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway. She spun around, guilt written all over her face. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, and her usually perfect hair was a mess. Connor, thank God you're here. We need to talk. No, we need you to get out of my workshop. This is still my house until the divorce is final. Please, just listen to me. I know you're angry, but this has gone too far. Rick lost his job. His wife is taking everything. You've destroyed his life. Good. The simple finality of that word seemed to hit her like a physical blow. How can you say that? He's a good man who made a mistake. A good man doesn't sleep with married women. A good man doesn't conspire and to defraud someone's husband. A good man doesn't threaten people in parking lots. He threatened you? I pulled out my phone and played the recording from the previous night. Tara's face went pale as she'd She listened to Rick's drunken threats and our confrontation. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Connor, I'm so sorry. I never wanted any of this to happen." "But it did happen. And now you both have to live with the consequences." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch my arm. "Please, I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I'll do anything." I moved away from her touch. "There's nothing to fix, Tara. Our marriage is over. Has been for months, ever since you decided Rick was more important than your vows." "That's not true. I love you, Connor. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. You love the security I provided. You love the house I fixed up. You love the idea of not having to start over from scratch. But you don't love me." Tears were streaming down her face now. "How can you be so cold? This isn't like you." "You're right. The old Connor would have forgiven you. Would have gone to counseling and tried to work things out. Would have let you walk away with half of everything while you moved in with your boyfriend." I looked around the workshop at the tools and projects that represented years of hard work. But that Connor was a fool. "So what now? You're going to destroy me too?" "I'm not destroying anyone. I'm just making sure the truth comes out." She laughed bitterly. "The truth? You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I was planning to divorce you. But you know what? I was miserable, Connor. Miserable and lonely and tired of being married to someone who cared more about his tools than his wife. So you decided to cheat instead of talking to me about it. I tried talking to you for years, but you were always too busy, too tired, too focused on your projects to pay attention to me. And that justifies what you did? No, but it explains it. Rick made me feel alive again. He made me feel wanted and beautiful and important. And now he's unemployed and getting divorced and facing criminal charges. Still feel alive?" She slumped against my workbench, all the fight going out of her. "What do you want from me, Connor? What will it take for you to stop this? I want you to move out of my house. I want you to sign the divorce papers without contesting them. And I want you to disappear from my life. And if I don't, then things get worse for you, much worse." She stared at me for a long moment, perhaps finally understanding that the man she'd married was gone, replaced by someone harder and less forgiving. "I need time to find a place," she said quietly. "You have until Friday." After she left, I spent the afternoon securing the house and workshop. New locks, security cameras, motion sensors, the works. If Tara or Rick decided to get desperate, I wanted to be ready. That evening, I was installing the last camera when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You'll pay for what you've done." I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Janet Carter. Whoever sent it, Rick or Tara or one of their friends, had just made another legal mistake. Wednesday brought more good news. The company completed their investigation and terminated both Tara and Rick for violating the employee conduct policy. Rick's arrest had made the local business journal, and the story was spreading through social media. But the best news came Thursday morning when Janet called with an update on Rick's situation. His wife's attorney found something interesting during the asset discovery process, she said. "What kind of something?" "Rick's been using company credit cards to pay for hotel rooms and dinners with your wife. That's embezzlement, Connor. The company is filing criminal charges. Embezzlement was a felony. Rick wasn't just losing his job and his marriage, he was looking at prison time." "There's more," Janet continued. "The company wants to settle with you out of court to avoid bad publicity. They're offering a substantial sum." "How substantial?" "6 figures. They don't want this turning into a wrongful end lawsuit against their executives." I'd never had 6 figures in my bank account at one time. The irony was perfect. Rick's affair was about to make me wealthy while destroying him financially. "Take it," I said. Thursday evening, I was in my workshop when the security system alerted me to movement in the driveway. The camera showed Rick's Mercedes pulling up to the house, music blaring, and the engine revving aggressively. I watched on my phone as Rick got out of the car, clearly drunk again, and started pounding on my front door. "Connor, get out here, you coward!" I called 911 first, then stepped outside with my phone recording everything. "You're trespassing, Rick, and you're drunk again." "I lost everything because of you," he screamed. "My job, my family, everything. You lost everything because you're a cheating, embezzling drunk who can't control himself?" He charged at me then, but he was too intoxicated to be coordinated. I sidestepped easily and he crashed into my porch railing. The police are on their way, I told him. You might want to leave before they get here. I'm not going anywhere until you fix this. Fix what? Your life? That's not my job, Rick. That's yours, and you've done a pretty terrible job of it so far. The sound of sirens in the distance seemed to penetrate his booze-soaked brain. He looked around wildly, as if just realizing where he was and what he was doing. This isn't over, he slurred, stumbling back toward his car. Actually, it is, I said. After tonight, you'll be in jail for violating the restraining order my lawyer filed this afternoon. He stopped dead. What restraining order? The one that says you can't come within 500 feet of me, my house, or my workplace, which you just violated on camera. The police cars turned onto my street, their red and blue lights painting the night in patriotic colors. Rick looked at them, looked at me, and made the stupidest decision of his life. He tried to run. He made it about 50 feet before tripping over his own feet and face-planting on the sidewalk. The officers had him cuffed and in the back of a patrol car within minutes. You'll need to come down to the station to give a statement, one of the officers told me. No problem. I've got everything recorded if you need it. As they drove Rick away, I noticed Tara's car parked at the end of the block. She'd been watching the whole thing. Our eyes met for a moment across the distance, and I saw something in her expression I'd never seen before. Fear. Good. It was about time she understood that actions have consequences. Friday morning, Tara moved out of the house while I was at work. She left no note, no forwarding address, just empty closets and drawers. The only thing she took that surprised me was our wedding photo from the mantelpiece. I found it in the trash can by the curb, the glass cracked and the frame bent. Even in defeat, she had to have the last word. But as I stood there holding the broken photo, I realized I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no anger, just the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. The ledger was balanced, justice had been served. And for the first time in months, I was free. The divorce proceedings began the following Monday with all the drama of a daytime soap opera. Tara had managed to scrape together enough money to hire a lawyer, a young guy fresh out of law school who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else when he saw the evidence Janet Carter laid out. Your Honor, Janet began, this is a clear case of marital misconduct with extensive financial implications. The defendant conducted a systematic affair while conspiring to defraud my client of his marital assets. Tara's lawyer, whose name was apparently Brad something or other, tried to mount a defense. Your Honor, while my client admits to the extramarital relationship, she disputes the characterization of conspiracy. Does she dispute the existence of the exit strategy document? Janet interrupted, sliding a copy across to the judge. The one where she calculated my client's assets and planned how to maximize her share of the marital estate while conducting an affair, Brad. Something or other looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. That is, my client was exploring her options. Her options, Janet repeated, including using marital funds to purchase gifts for her paramour, using the marital home to conduct the affair, and coordinating with said paramour to time their respective divorces for maximum financial benefit. Judge Morrison was a stern woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every variation of marital misconduct imaginable. She reviewed the documents with the expression of someone reading a particularly unpleasant medical report. Mrs. Hennessy, she said finally, do you contest these allegations? Tara stood up slowly. She'd lost weight in the past few weeks, and her expensive clothes hung loose on her frame. Your Honor, I made mistakes, but I never intended... Mrs. Hennessy, I'm not asking about your intentions. I'm asking if you contest the factual allegations presented by opposing counsel. Tara looked at her lawyer, who gave her a barely perceptible shake of his head. No, Your Honor, I don't contest them. Very well. Given the evidence of marital misconduct and financial conspiracy, I'm awarding Mr. Hennessy the marital home, all jointly held assets, and his full pension. Mrs. Hennessy will receive her personal belongings and whatever assets she held prior to the marriage. I tried to keep the satisfaction off my face, but it was difficult. Tara was walking away with essentially nothing. No house, no savings, no alimony. She'd gambled everything on her affair with Rick, and lost spectacularly. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, given the evidence of conspiracy between Mrs. Hennessy and Mr. Farrow, I'm ordering Mrs. Hennessy to pay Mr. Hennessy's legal fees. That was the cherry on top. Not only was Tara getting nothing, She was going to pay for the privilege of losing everything. After the hearing, I found myself face to face with Tara in the courthouse hallway. She looked broken, defeated, like someone who'd just watched their life collapse in real time. "I hope you're happy," she said quietly. "I'm satisfied," and I replied. "There's a difference. You destroyed me, Connor, completely." "No, I held you accountable. You destroyed yourself." She laughed bitterly. "Accountable? Is that what you call it? I lost my job, my home, my marriage, my friends. I'm living in a studio apartment and working at a call center because no one in HR will hire me after what you did." "What I did was tell the truth." "The truth," she repeated. "You want to know the truth? The truth is that I loved you once, really loved you. But you were so busy being the perfect husband, the reliable provider, that you forgot to be a partner. So you found a new partner. I found someone who paid attention to me, someone who made me feel like I mattered. And where is he now?" The question hit home. Rick was currently serving 6 months in county jail for embezzlement and violating the restraining order. His wife had taken him for everything in their divorce, and word was he'd be working construction when he got out, assuming anyone would hire a convicted felon. "That's not the point," Tara said. "That's exactly the point. You threw away everything we had for someone who turned out to be a fraud, a criminal, a man who's now in jail because he couldn't control himself. At least he made me feel alive. And now you're dead, professionally, socially, financially. Was it worth it?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to find some cutting remark, some way to hurt me the way I'd hurt her. But there was nothing left. I'd taken everything. "Goodbye, Connor," she said finally, and walked away. I watched her go, this woman I'd once loved enough to marry, and felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. The ledger was balanced, justice had been served. But apparently, the universe wasn't done with me yet. The story of Rick's downfall had made the local business papers, and someone had connected the dots to my divorce. A reporter from the Cleveland Plain Dealer called me the next day. "Mr. Hennessy, I'm doing a story about workplace affairs and their consequences. Would you be willing to comment on your situation with Rick Farrow and your ex-wife?" "What kind of comment?" "Well, you essentially destroyed two people's careers and lives. Some might say your response was disproportionate to the offense." I laughed. "Disproportionate? They conspired to steal half my assets while conducting an affair. They mocked me behind my back for months. They planned their whole future around defrauding me. And you think my response was disproportionate? But the consequences are exactly what they should be. Actions have consequences. If more people understood that, maybe there'd be less cheating and fraud in the world." "So you have no regrets?" "None whatsoever." The article ran the following Sunday with the headline, "Revenge or Justice? Local man's response to wife's affair destroys 2 lives." It painted me as either a wronged husband seeking justice or a vindictive ex plotting elaborate revenge, depending on your perspective. The comments section was brutal. Half the readers called me a hero. The other half called me a monster. But I didn't care about public opinion. I cared about results. And the results spoke for themselves. Rick was in jail, facing financial ruin and a criminal record that would follow him for the rest of his life. Tara was working at a call center, living in a studio apartment, and would probably never work in HR again. Meanwhile, I was living in my fully paid off house, with a healthy bank account and the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Dave stopped by that Sunday evening with a 6-pack of beer and a concerned expression. "You see the article?" he asked, settling into my porch swing. I saw it. Some of the comments were pretty harsh. People are entitled to their opinions. Dave studied me for a moment. "You know, Con, I've known you for 8 years. You were always the nice guy, the one who helped people out, who gave everyone the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, well, being nice got me a cheating wife and a conspiracy to defraud me of everything I'd worked for. I'm not saying what Tara did was right, but this isn't you, man. This cold, calculating revenge stuff. It's like you became a different person." I took a long pull from my beer and considered his words. Maybe I did become a different person. Maybe the old Connor was too trusting, too forgiving. Maybe the old Connor was a fool. Or maybe the old Connor was a good man who got hurt and decided to hurt back. And what's wrong with that? Dave shook his head. Nothing, I guess, if that's who you want to be. After he left, I sat on my porch in the gathering darkness, thinking about his words. Was I a different person? Had my quest for justice turned me into something I didn't recognize? But then I thought about Tara's exit strategy document, about the group chat where they mocked me, about Rick's threats and drunken attacks. I thought about how they'd planned to steal half my assets while laughing about my stupidity. No, I decided. I wasn't a different person. I was the same person, just with my eyes open. The old Connor had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best about people. The new Connor understood that some people would take advantage of that trust, and that sometimes the only way to stop them was to make the consequences so severe that they'd never try it again. The ledger was balanced. Justice had been served. And if that made me a monster in some people's eyes, so be it. I'd rather be a monster who protected himself than a fool who got destroyed by people he trusted. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I thought the story was over. Rick was halfway through his jail sentence, Tara had disappeared into whatever new life she was building, and I was settling into my routine as a single man in a house that finally felt like home again. I should have known better. The first sign of trouble came on a rainy Thursday evening in March. I was in my workshop, rebuilding a carburetor for my truck, when the security system alerted me to movement near the back of the property. The camera showed a figure in dark clothing moving through the trees behind my house. I grabbed my phone and switched to the live feed from all the cameras. There, 2 figures now, both dressed in black, moving toward the house. One was tall and lean, the other shorter and more compact. Even in the grainy night vision footage, something about their movements was familiar. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Connor. I recognized the voice immediately. Rick Farrow, calling from what sounded like a payphone. You're supposed to be in jail, I said. Got out early for good behavior. Funny thing about jail, it gives you a lot of time to think, to plan. Planning to violate your restraining order again? Because that worked out so well last time. The restraining order expired when I went to jail. I checked with my lawyer. I pulled up the legal documents on my phone. He was right. The temporary restraining order had been tied to his criminal case and had expired upon sentencing. What do you want, Rick? I want my life back. The life you stole from me. I didn't steal anything. You threw it away when you decided to cheat on your wife and embezzle from your company. I lost everything because of you. My job, my wife, my kids won't even talk to me. I'm living in a halfway house and working construction for minimum wage. Sounds like consequences. Consequences, he repeated. And I could hear the rage building in his voice. You want to talk about consequences? Let me tell you about consequences. The line went dead. I immediately called 911, but without an active restraining order and no specific threat, there wasn't much they could do except send a patrol car to drive by the house. I spent the night awake, watching the security cameras and listening for any sound that didn't belong. But nothing happened. Whoever had been in the trees was gone. The next morning brought a new problem. I arrived at work to find my truck's tires slashed and "Cheater" spray-painted across the windshield. Plant security said their cameras hadn't caught anything, but they'd review the footage. Looks personal, said Jim, the security guard, as we surveyed the damage. Yeah, it is. I called Dave to come pick me up, then spent my lunch break dealing with insurance and getting the truck towed to a repair shop. When I got back to work, there was a manila envelope on my desk with no return address. Inside were photos. Dozens of them, taken with a telephoto lens over the past several weeks. Me leaving for work, me at the grocery store, me in my workshop. Someone had been watching me, documenting my routine. At the bottom of the envelope was a single sheet of paper with a message, typed in block letters. You destroyed my life. Now I'm going to destroy yours. I took the envelope straight to Janet Carter's office. This constitutes stalking and criminal threatening, she said after reviewing the contents. We can get a new restraining order based on this. How long will that take? A few days for the paperwork, then we need to serve him. Problem is, if he's staying at a halfway house, he might be hard to locate. What about police protection? For property damage and vague threats. They'll take a report, but don't expect round-the-clock security. I left Janet's office feeling more unsettled than I'd been since the whole mess started. Rick in jail had been Rick contained. Rick on the streets with nothing left to lose was a different problem entirely. That evening, I was installing additional security lights around the property when my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came over with a concerned expression. "Connor, there was a man asking questions about you today." Mrs. Patterson was 82 and spent most of her time watching the neighborhood from her front window. If anyone would notice strangers, it would be her. "What kind of questions?" "About your schedule, whether you lived alone, that sort of thing." I told him it was none of his business and he should talk to you directly if he had questions. "What did he look like?" "Tall, thin, needed a shave. Looked like he'd been sleeping rough." That sounded like Rick. 6 months in county jail followed by life in a halfway house wouldn't have been kind to his appearance. "Did he say anything else?" "Just that he was an old friend trying to reconnect, but Connor, I've lived here for 30 years. I know the difference between a friend and trouble. That man was trouble." I thanked Mrs. Patterson and finished installing the lights, but my mind was racing. Rick was escalating, moving from vandalism to surveillance to direct reconnaissance. The pattern was clear. He was planning something. The question was what and when. I got my answer the next night. I was asleep when the smoke alarm went off at 2:47 a.m. I stumbled out of bed, immediately smelling smoke, and ran downstairs to find my kitchen filled with gray haze. The source was obvious. Someone had thrown a Molotov cocktail through the back window. The flames were spreading across the kitchen floor or licking at the cabinets I'd installed myself 3 years ago. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from under the sink and managed to knock down the worst of it, but the damage was extensive. The fire department arrived within minutes, followed by the police. While the firefighters finished extinguishing the flames and checking for structural damage, Detective Sarah Martinez took my statement. "Any idea who might have done this?" Shimon said. I showed her the photos and threatening note from the previous day. "Rick Farrow, my ex-wife's former boss. He just got out of jail and blames me for ruining his life. We'll need to bring him in for questioning. You have an address?" "Halfway house on the east side, but I don't know which one." Detective Martinez made notes in her pad. "We'll find him. In the meantime, you might want to stay somewhere else for a few days. This kind of escalation, it usually doesn't stop with property damage." I called Dave, who came over immediately and helped me pack a bag. As we were loading my truck, I noticed a figure standing under a streetlight at the end of the block, watching us. Even at that distance, I could make out Rick's lean frame and unkempt hair. "There," I told Detective Martinez, pointing down the street. But by the time she looked, he was gone. I spent the weekend at Dave's house while the police searched for Rick and the insurance adjuster assessed the damage to my kitchen. The fire had been contained to one room, but the smoke damage was extensive. It would take weeks of work to make the house livable again. Monday morning brought news from Detective Martinez. They'd found Rick at a motel on the outskirts of town, along with evidence linking him to both the arson and the vandalism at my workplace. He was back in custody, facing serious felony charges that would likely send him to state prison for years. "Problem is," Detective Martinez explained, "he wasn't working alone." She showed me security footage from the motel. Rick entering his room around midnight, then leaving 20 minutes later with a woman. The footage was grainy, but something about the woman's build and the way she moved was familiar. "We think his accomplice is still out there," Detective Martinez continued. "Someone who helped plan this and might continue the maltreatment, even with Farrow in custody." I stared at the frozen image on her computer screen, trying to make out the woman's features. The height was right, the build was right, but the hair was different, shorter and darker than I remembered. "Can you enhance this image?" "We're working on it. In the meantime, I'd recommend staying somewhere else until we can identify and locate the accomplice." But I was tired of running, tired of letting other people's bad decisions control my life. "No, I'm going home." "Mr. Hennessy, that might not be safe. My house has a security system that would make Fort Knox jealous. I've got cameras covering every angle, motion sensors, reinforced doors and windows. If someone wants to come after me, they'll have to work for it." Detective Martinez looked like she wanted to argue, but she just shook her head. "Your choice, but call us immediately if anything else happens." I went home that afternoon and spent the evening reviewing the security footage from the past week, looking for any sign of Rick's accomplice. Most of it was routine: delivery trucks, neighbors walking their dogs, the occasional cat prowling through the yard. But there, on Friday night's footage, I found what I was looking for. A figure in dark clothing moving through the trees behind the house, just like the night Rick had called me. But this time, when the figure stepped into the light from one of my security cameras, I got a clear view of her face. It was Tara. My ex-wife, the woman I divorced and destroyed, had teamed up with her former lover to burn down my house. The irony was almost poetic. The two people whose lives I'd ruined, working together to ruin mine. I called Detective Martinez immediately. "Are you sure it's her?" she asked after I emailed her the enhanced footage. "Positive, that's my ex-wife, Tara Hennessy. She's been working with Rick. We'll put out a bolo alert. Any idea where she might be staying?" "No clue. Last I heard, she was living in a studio apartment somewhere, but that was months ago. We'll find her. In the meantime, you need to be extra careful. If she's desperate enough to commit arson, there's no telling what else she might do." That night, I sat in my damaged house with all the lights on and the security system armed, waiting. I knew she was out there somewhere, planning her next move. The question was whether she'd be smart enough to run or desperate enough to try again. I got my answer at 3:15 a.m. when the motion sensors triggered around the front of the house. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone and saw her standing in my driveway, no longer bothering to hide. She was wearing jeans and a dark hoodie, and she was carrying something in her right hand. I called 911 first, then armed myself with a baseball bat and went to the front door. "Hello, Tara," I said through the reinforced glass. "Hello, Connor." Her voice was different, harder, more desperate than I'd ever heard it. "We need to talk. The police are on their way." "Good. Maybe they can explain to me why my life had to be completely destroyed because I made one mistake." "One mistake? You had a months-long affair, conspired to defraud me, and now you've committed arson. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of criminal behavior." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Criminal behavior. Listen to you. With your lawyer words and your moral superiority, you destroyed two people's lives over an affair. I exposed the truth. You destroyed your own lives." "The truth," she repeated. "You want to know the truth? The truth is that I loved Rick, really loved him. And he loved me. We could have been happy together if you hadn't decided to play God. You could have been happy if you'd gotten divorced before starting your affair. Instead, you chose to lie and cheat and steal. I chose to find happiness wherever I could find it, and you punished me for it. I held you accountable for it." She raised her right hand and I could see what she was holding. A tool, small and black in the porch light. "Well, now it's time for you to be held accountable." "Tara, put the tool down. This won't solve anything." "It'll solve everything. Rick's in jail because of you. I'm living in poverty because of you. Our lives are ruined because of you. Your lives are ruined because you made bad choices. Shooting me won't change that. Maybe not, but it'll make me feel better." The sound of sirens in the distance seemed to penetrate her desperation. She looked toward the street, then back at me, and I could see her calculating her options. "It's over, Tara. Put the tool down and surrender. Don't make this worse than it already is." Worse?" She laughed again, that same bitter sound. "How could it possibly be worse? I've lost everything. Everything, and my job, my home, my future, the man I loved. There's nothing left to lose. There's your freedom. There's the rest of your life. Don't throw that away too." The police cars turned onto my street, their red and blue lights painting the night in familiar colors. Tara looked at them, looked at me, and for a moment I thought she was going to surrender. Instead, she raised the tool toward me. I dove to the side just as she pulled the trigger, the bullet shattering the glass in my front door. The police officers were shouting now, ordering her to drop the weapon, but she was beyond hearing them. She fired twice more, wild shots that went wide before the officers returned fire. Tara crumpled to the driveway, the tool skittering away across the concrete. I stayed down until the shooting stopped, then carefully looked outside. Tara was lying motionless on my driveway, blood pooling beneath her. The officers were approaching cautiously, weapons still drawn. "Is she?" I started to ask. "Paramedics are on the way," one of the officers said. "Are you hurt?" I checked myself for injuries and found none. The bullets had all missed, though my front door looked like a war zone. "I'm fine." But as I watched the paramedics work on Tara's still form, I realized that wasn't entirely true. Something had changed in me during this confrontation, something fundamental. The woman I'd once loved enough to marry had just tried to eliminate me, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no anger, just a cold satisfaction that the threat had been neutralized. Tara died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The official cause of end was blood loss from multiple fire shot wounds. But I knew the real cause was the same thing that had eliminated Rick's career and destroyed both their lives. Consequences. They'd made their choices, and those choices had led them to this moment. I hadn't pulled the trigger, but I'd set in motion the chain of events that made it inevitable. The ledger was finally balanced, the debt was paid in full. As I stood in my driveway watching the coroner's van drive away with Tara's body, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year. Peace. The war was over. Justice had been served. The people who'd tried to destroy me had destroyed themselves instead. Detective Martinez approached as the last of the police cars pulled away. "This is over now," she said. "Farrow's looking at attempted arson and conspiracy charges that'll keep him locked up for a long time. And Mrs. Hennessy, well, she won't be bothering anyone again." "No," I agreed, "she won't." "You might want to consider counseling," Detective Martinez added. "This kind of trauma can have lasting effects." I looked at my damaged house, at the bloodstains on my driveway, at the shattered glass from my front door. "I'm fine," I said. "Better than fine, actually." She gave me a concerned look, but didn't push the issue. After she left, I went inside and poured myself a drink. Good whiskey, the kind I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough. I raised the glass in a toast to my empty house. "To consequences," I said aloud, "and to the people who finally learned what they mean." Then I drank, and for the first time in over a year, I smiled without reservation. The underdog had won. The ledger was settled, and I was finally completely free.
7시 한 10분 뒤에 나갈게. 10분 뒤에 유린기랑 스낵랩 할 거예요. 은정이 어서오세요. 리리. 그 스낵랩 할 건데, 아 재료 꺼내놓을까? 이거 잠깐 재료 좀 꺼내놓을게. 아우, 날씨가 추우니까. 아, 유린기 싹가능이지. 유린기 싹가능. 야. 피자는 내일 해야겠네. 잠깐만요. 아야! 아이씨, 떨어뜨렸어. 떨어뜨렸어. 재료를 하고 기름이 있어야 된다고? 패딩이 없다고? 나 이거 패딩 한 10년 넘은 건데? 이거 10년 넘어서 여기가 사갔어. 이거 봐. 나 이렇게 뜯어진 거 처음 봤어, 올해. 이거 좀 맞으면 이거 떨어져, 이렇게. 지퍼가 걸려서 그런 게 아니라. 수급자 안녕? 야, 비싼 거 사서 그냥 좀 오래 입어. 한 10만원짜리 사가지고. 이거 뭐야, 여기 지퍼도 이렇게 된 거야, 이렇게. 뜯어진 거야. 그 잠그지를 못해. 요 패딩 이쁘다고? 근데 춥잖아. 3년 입어서. 그냥 조금 이른 있는데 같은 거에 가가지고 사서 입고. 롱패딩 따뜻해. 불편하지가 않아. 아니야, 괜찮아. 지퍼만 안 잠그면 편한데? 에? 잠깐만 장갑 좀 끼고. 아우 추워. 아유 밥 달라고 해주면 요리? 이거 여기 이제 어차피 찍찍이가 있으니까 여기 고장났으니까 찍찍이로 잠그는 거지. 이렇게 그러면은 이게 되는 거지. 팔보채? 팔보채가 뭐지? 자크? 이거 저기 수리 안 될걸요? 아마? 우리 둘만 웃는 거? 나도 웃었어? 아 요근 몇 시야 몇 시? 시간 몇 시입니까?